In the sweltering sun of an Italian summer, in the year 216 BCE, the fate of an empire stood on the edge of a sword. The Roman Republic, wounded and humiliated by defeat after defeat, had finally had enough. Hannibal, the Carthaginian general who had crossed the Alps with elephants, burned Roman supply lines, and shattered their pride, had to be stopped. No more skirmishes, no more retreats. Rome wanted annihilation. So they gathered the greatest army they had ever assembled, nearly 80,000 soldiers, legionaries, officers, auxiliaries, all sworn to crush their enemy in one final decisive blow. Their destination? A quiet stretch of land near the river Aufidus, near the small town of Cannae. Their objective? Destroy Hannibal. But Hannibal hadn't survived this long through brute strength. He wasn't just a warrior, he was a master of deception, and at Cannae, he would show the world what genius looked like. Hannibal's army was smaller, around 40,000 men, a patchwork force of seasoned North African veterans, fierce Iberian swordsmen, towering Gallic warriors, and Numidian cavalry that rode like lightning. A strange alliance of cultures, languages, and weapons. But it wasn't chaos, it was a symphony, and Hannibal was the conductor. He chose the battlefield with care, a flat, open plain hemmed in by the river, ideal for cavalry maneuvers, ideal for trapping an enemy, and ideal for what he was about to unleash. While the Romans saw open ground, Hannibal saw opportunity. He placed his weakest troops, intentionally, in the center of the line. Behind them, his battle-hardened veterans waited, quiet and ready. On the flanks, he positioned his most agile infantry and the deadly cavalry units that had broken Roman formations in previous battles. Then, he waited. The Romans came in force, led by consuls Varro and Paulus, eager, confident, arrogant. They believed the Carthaginian line would collapse like parchment. So they pressed forward tight and relentless, with brutal efficiency, a wall of shields, a storm of swords. And as expected, Hannibal's center began to give way. It was no accident. The line bent, curved inward, like a net drawing in a catch. The Romans surged, pushing deeper and deeper, believing victory was near. But they were not advancing into victory. They were walking into a trap. At the perfect moment, when the Romans were deep inside the fold, Hannibal gave the signal. The Carthaginian flanks pivoted inward like jaws snapping shut. Veteran infantry surged forward from both sides, slamming into the Roman wings. At the same time, Hannibal's cavalry, having obliterated the Roman horsemen, wheeled around and attacked from the rear. The Roman army, once proud and massive, was completely surrounded, trapped, encircled. Nowhere to run, nowhere to breathe. It was a tactic never before seen on this scale, the double envelopment. A masterpiece of military geometry, precision, and timing. The Roman ranks, packed too tightly to maneuver, began to collapse from the inside. They fought, they screamed, they suffocated, but there was no escape. Hour after hour, the killing continued. By nightfall, the plain of Cannae was silent, but soaked in blood. Over 50,000 Roman soldiers lay dead. Another 10,000 were captured. Only a few thousand survived to tell the tale. Rome, the mighty republic, had just suffered the worst military disaster in its history. And Hannibal had just executed one of the greatest tactical victories the world has ever known. To this day, his maneuver at Cannae is studied in military academies across the globe, from West Point to Sandhurst. It is the gold standard of battlefield brilliance. And yet, the story does not end there. Hannibal, for all his genius, did not march on Rome. Whether from caution, lack of reinforcements, or faith in diplomacy, he waited. Some say it was his only true mistake. Rome, stunned but unbroken, adapted. It refused to negotiate. Instead, it changed its entire strategy, avoiding large battles, cutting Hannibal off from supplies, and striking at his homeland of Carthage. Years later, at the Battle of Zama, Hannibal would finally be defeated by a young Roman general named Scipio Africanus. But Cannae remained something more than just a battle. It became legend, a place where raw numbers meant nothing, where strategy beat strength, where one man against impossible odds showed that brilliance could rewrite history. Because in the dust of Cannae, Hannibal didn't just win a battle, he reshaped the art of war, and proved once and for all that true victory doesn't belong to the largest army, but to the sharpest mind.